Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I am very happy you are here today. It is now the time of year for my A Very Necessary Deep Dive of whatever TV show I feel like talking about at the moment, series. And I needed to start off with an iconic bang, so what was the show that instantly popped up into my brain? Desperate Housewives, of course. I am so excited to be deep diving this show. Desperate Housewives is probably my top 5 TV dramas of all time. I rewatch it at least once a year, sometimes two. I would say Desperate Housewives was the it girl of TV shows before the boom in like the late 2000s and peak of the early 2010s, so we have to remember our roots. Before we begin, I do want to give some quick background information on the show. If you do not care about this and want to get straight to episode 1, go to the chapters tab and click episode 1, but for the rest of us, let's get into how Desperate Housewives came to be. Desperate Housewives was a comedy drama that ran on ABC for 8 seasons from 2004 to 2012. The show was a huge success, with it having the highest ratings on TV for the first 5 seasons, and it was critically acclaimed. This show was so huge, with it having an audience of like 120 million viewers across 20 countries. She was an international sensation. I was obviously way too young to watch this show in real time, so I didn't get to experience the greatness live, but when high school me found this show, my life hasn't been the same since. Enough of all that, let's get into season 1 of Desperate Housewives. The first scene of Desperate Housewives opens up with a little walkthrough of Wisteria Lane. The kids are playing, the sun is shining, literally everything you could ask for a middle of nowhere suburb is thriving. We then meet Mary Alice Young as she's tending her garden, and she has a little monologue in her head where she says the morning paper hit the town and it ran a story about the day she had last Thursday. Turns out last Thursday was the day that Mary Alice offed herself in the middle of her living room. Could we get some context, please? The entire episode follows the events right after this, and she narrates as a kind of ominous presence on the show, so she's never really gone. Martha Huber, her next door neighbor, hears the gunshot sound, and she's like, oh my God, what is that? Oh my God. So she goes to her closet to get a blender that she borrowed from Mary Alice like 6 months ago before actually checking in on her, because she can't show up empty-handed. That would be rude. She then rings the doorbell. Obviously, no one answers, so then she runs to the back of the house, and how she's able to do that, I'm confused about. Why don't they have a gate? She then sees Mary Alice's body on the ground. She calls for an ambulance, and she's horrified for like 0.5 seconds before she realizes, well, at least I don't have to give back the blender. The next day is Mary Alice's funeral, so everyone comes by to pay their respects. We then meet Lynette Scavo, another mom on the lane, as she's going to the funeral, and she brings a homemade fried chicken, but she's not a typical house mom. She works, and she was climbing her way up the corporate ladder, at least she was before she got pregnant, and her husband Tom was like, well, I'm not gonna stay at home, and we can't afford daycare, so you stay at home. So now her life is incredibly hectic, and she has like no time to herself, and that chicken she brought, yeah, it was store-bought. She has 4 kids, and 3 of them are literally menaces to society, so I kind of understand why she hates her life. Next, we meet Gabriela Solis, who brings a spicy paella, but she's not a mom on the lane. She's a former model from New York, which is how she met her now rich husband, Carlos. You would think her life is perfect, but her and her husband, Carlos, are constantly fighting like all the time, so remember this. We then meet Bree Vandekamp, Mary Alice's next door neighbor, and she brings homemade muffins from scratch. If Nara Smith saw Bree walking down the street, she would run in the other direction. Bree is known on the lane as the standard for what it means to be a house mom. She's very precise with everything that she does, but her family does not feel that way about her. When she talks to Paul, Mary Alice's now, I guess, widow husband, and her son Zach to give them food, she does this.
Bree, you shouldn't have gone to all this trouble.
It was no trouble at all. Now the basket with the red ribbon is filled with desserts for your guests, but the one with the blue ribbon is just for you and Zachary.
We finally meet Susan Meyer, who lives across the street with her daughter Julie, who brings mac and cheese. She's kind of cute and clumsy with everything she does, but I find her quite irritating, and I'm gonna say that this entire video. She's the only mom on the lane without a husband because he literally cheated on her and left her and their daughter with his secretary, so she's trying to find a new man ASAP. All of them meet together at the funeral because they're really good friends with each other, and obviously they're all sad because their friend literally offed herself in the middle of her living room. It then goes back to a flashback about a month prior, and this show was constantly going in between past and present, so I need you to pay attention here. Sometime before Mary Alice Susan is telling the girls about how Carl has been cheating on her, and they're like, you need to kill that man. He's no good. Men are literally terrible. They're correct. But they're all there for her, especially Mary Alice. Susan is all emotional, and Gabby is here like, well, if she was having problems, why didn't she tell nobody? And everyone's like, why would you say that? Also, turns out that Paul was eavesdropping on their entire conversation, which is very weird behavior, so we're getting some bad vibes there. Remember how I said Susan was looking for a new man? Yeah, she meets this guy Mike there at the funeral, and they end up flirting. He's a new neighbor that just moved on to the lane, and he's a plumber, so... Julie goes over to Mike's because she kicked her ball in his backyard, but really, she's just trying to get her mom a man. It worked because she came back to Susan with a lot of information on Mike so she can shoot her shot, so clearly, Julie's a genius. At first, Susan is like, nah, I'm good, and then Julie's like, okay, well, I heard Dad and his new girl keying about you not having a man since the divorce. Susan goes, oh, really? So then she marches on over to Mike's with a plant. Right at that second, Edie, a recent divorcee on the lane, shows up with a meal for him. Edie is known as the slut on the lane, but really she's just living her best life. Susan is now pissed off, but she's not about to let it get ugly, at least in front of Mike. Edie then asks Mike for help with a plumbing issue at her place tonight, and Susan's like, I'm about to beat this bitch up. Gabby and Carlos are fighting again. He has a business party with this man that's literally always creepy to Gabby, so obviously she doesn't want to go, and he's like, well, I pay for everything and he made me a lot of money, so he can be as creepy as he wants. He then yells at his gardener John for not doing his job, and when Carlos leaves, Gabby hooks up with John. This has been going on for a while, and I'm not mad at it, except for the fact that John is literally 17. Officers, take her away. Bree is eating dinner with her family, and keep in mind this dinner she spent the last 3 hours prepping for, and they're all being ungrateful about it. Andrew, her son, is some kind of demon spawn because when she rightfully gets mad about them being ungrateful, he's like, well, no one told you to spend 3 hours making dinner. Rex, her husband, is very silent when the kids are literally bad-mouthing Bree. Something to remember though is that Rex is allergic to onions. Keep that in mind. Susan goes to Mike's to ask him out, but Edie is also there, so she like malfunctions or something and says that she needs a clog and needs his help.
I have a clog.
Excuse me?
And you're a plumber, right?
Yeah.
The clog's in the pipe.
Yeah, that's usually where they are.
So Susan runs over to her place, and her and Julie stuff hair and other kitchen items down the drain. Mike comes over to fix it, and he's like, you know you have a popsicle stick in your pipe? And Susan's like, oh, that's silly, Julie. Bree and the family go to a barbecue restaurant since they literally hate her cooking, and while the kids go to play, Rex tells Bree that he wants a divorce. Bree is shocked, so she gets up to leave to make him a little salad, and Martha comes by to be nosy or whatever, and while she's getting Rex's salad together, she puts onions in it because she got distracted. So Rex eats it and ends up in the hospital. Do we care? No. Zach is trying to get some sleep when he literally hears Paul by the pool, and he like drained out all of the water in the pool, and he's like axing the ground, which is very suspicious behavior. Tom finally returns home from some business trip, and the first thing he wants to do is have, because that's helpful. Lynette says she's not on the pill anymore, so they need to use protection, and Tom's like, well, what's the point of that? So she punches him.
Let's risk it.
Let's risk it?
Yeah.
Rightfully so. That sounded like a threat to get her pregnant again. At the hospital, Rex is convinced that Bree was trying to kill him since he wants a divorce, and she was like, no, I was just distracted, babe. He then goes on this whole monologue about how he misses the old fun Bree and hates the clean-cut, polished person that she's become. And for the first time in the episode, Bree shows an emotion by crying in the bathroom, but very quietly. No one can see you sweat. Before the business party Gabby and Carlos are going to, he notices that the lawn hasn't been mowed, and he's like, I'm firing that little boy John. Gabby's like, no, Carlos, John did it. It's just dark. Let's go to the party. So Gabby pays a server to keep Carlos drunk all night, so she runs back home to mow the lawn in her expensive gown. She's nothing if not resourceful. Susan finds Martha at the market, and she finds out that Edie is inviting Mike over for drinks, and she's not having this. So she she goes over to Edie's with a measuring cup to borrow sugar to see if her and Mike are doing the deed. And she goes into Edie's house and hears her getting it on, so she gets all sad and ends up starting a fire in her house. Obviously, she can't put it out because it got so big, so she flees the scene, but she ends up leaving her measuring cup there. Edie's house burns to the ground and everyone's literally just watching it go up in flames like, oh, that's crazy. The girls talk about how Edie was with a man literally minutes before this fire happened and how now he's in the hospital for smoke inhalation. Susan's all sad because now she thinks Mike's in the hospital, but then a minute later he shows up and it's just like, oh my God. What happened? Susan is now very happy Edie didn't take her man. I mean, her house did have to burn down, but it's not that big of a deal. Mike goes back to his house to take a suspicious phone call where he says he's getting closer, and turns out he's been carrying a gun this entire time. Closer to what? And why do you need a gun on Wisteria Lane? The ladies all pack Mary Alice's stuff into a car, but they stop when they find a purple letter that was addressed to her the day before she died saying, I know what you did. It makes me sick. I'm going to tell. Well, Miss Girl, what did you do? Episode 2 opens up with Gabby cheating on her husband again with her underage boy Gardner, but Carlos ends up coming home, so she kicks John to the curb and the crisis is now averted. The ladies get together to discuss the purple letter they found and how weird it is, but they don't really decide on what to do with it yet. Zach sees that the ground under the pool has been dug out, and it's because Paul needed a chest he buried under there for some reason. Rex has been sleeping on the couch for some time now, so Bree finds him and is just like, let's not make any rash decisions with this divorce. How about marriage counseling? Rex is like, why won't you let me leave you? But fine. Carlos comes home late from yet another business meeting, so Gabby is very annoyed about it, so he buys her some jewelry to make up for it, and she tells him to get his act together and be the man she first married. And he's like, fine, I'll try. Susan plans a run-in with Mike outside and they get to talking and she ends up asking him out on a date and he's like, yeah, sure, you and Julie can come over for dinner. Edie and Martha are going through the rubble of her now burned house and they end up finding the measuring cup that Susan left there and Edie's like, yeah, that ain't mine. Martha finds this very suspicious, and if there's anything she's going to do, she is not going to mind her business. Lynette is driving somewhere and her boys are acting a fool per usual, so she ends up getting pulled over because they're not wearing seatbelts. And the officer goes, keep your kids in line, lady. That's literally your job. And Lynette goes off.
I haven't slept through the night in 6 years. And for you to stand there and judge me.
So he lets her off with a warning. Bree and Rex go to their marriage counseling session and she avoids talking about her feelings at all costs because why would she do that? John and Gabby hook up at his house this time and he ends up giving her a rose. And she's like, oh no, my underage boy Gardner is falling in love with me. I gotta go. Edie finds Mike and Susan prepping for their dinner and Mike ends up inviting Edie and Susan's like, you idiot, why would you do that? Lynette goes to Martha to give some of her old clothes to Edie since Edie's staying with her and Martha mentions how she saw her get pulled over by the police. Lynette complains, saying she's tired of her kids' antics, and Martha's like, oh, just do what my mom did when I was little. Leave me on the side of the road and drive off for a cool second. Lynette goes, yeah, I'm not doing that. Susan goes to talk to Paul to check in on him, and he's in a hurry to get somewhere. He has no time for pleasantries. He packs up that chest that he dug out of the pool all wrapped up nicely, and he leaves quickly. He later drives to a bridge and throws it into the lake. Martha, being her nosy self, goes to Susan's to see if she wants to donate some clothes to Edie, and she ends up asking Julie about it. When Julie goes upstairs, Martha goes around the house and finds that Susan just bought a new measuring cup similar to the one in Edie's house. Julie sees her with the cup and is like, what are you doing? Martha's like, oh, I like y'all's new measuring cup. And Julie goes, yeah, we lost ours. And Martha's like, oh, wow. That's interesting. Bree shows up to another counseling session, but Rex is nowhere to be found, and she's about to leave, but she gets distracted by the therapist's button falling off his coat. So she stays to sew it back on. How can you not love Bree? Lynette is on the road again, and her boys are up to no good, and she's had enough. So she leaves them on the side of the road.
Out! Can't behave, you heard me, you cannot ride. You, out! Move it!
She comes back after 5 seconds and then oops, the boys are gone. She ends up finding them at some lady's house and she's literally yelling at Lynette for abandoning her children. So the boys bite and push the lady to the ground and they all drive off. The boys get ghetto for their mom. We support that. Carlos buys Gabby a new car to surprise her and she likes it, but it wasn't exactly the kind of gesture she was looking for, but she's not gonna make him return it. Rex and Bree go back to therapy and he goes on and on about how she's been ruining their marriage, and the therapist is like, well, have you ever said thank you for all the things she's done? And Rex is gagged. At the dinner, Edie and Susan are literally going at it over Mike, but very subtly because Mike is too stupid to see what's going on. And Julie's like, you're not about to embarrass my mother up in here.
Mr. Rothwell, your fourth husband.
Oh, he was my second husband. I've only been married twice.
Twice? You weren't married to the guy with all the tattoos that they took away in handcuffs?
She's a real one. Mike's dog ends up in the hospital because Susan puts gravy all over herself to make him like her, and the dog swallows her earring, which is very much something Susan would do, but Mike forgives her anyway. The episode ends with Edie cleaning up after dinner at Mike's, and we then see a board with info on everyone on Wisteria, including Susan. Oh, so clearly he's up to something. Bree is tired of her husband ruining her reputation by sleeping downstairs, so she's like literally just move back upstairs. And he says he's not going to unless he physically cannot get some sleep. So she cuts the metal on the bed spring to make it uncomfortable. Susan reads the morning paper and notices that it's October 15th. It then goes back to a flashback about a month ago of Mary Alice with the girls at their weekly poker game. She says, guys, let's do a little dinner party at my place on the 16th, and everyone's down. Susan informs the girls of the dinner party they were all supposed to attend, and she's like, I mean, just because Mary Alice isn't here doesn't mean we still can't have it. And the girls are like, you're on to something. Let's do it. They decide to do it at Bree's since she's the only one with cooking skills around here, and everyone can bring their man. All the girls invite their men, and they're all complaining about it as if it's some kind of treacherous activity. Zach is talking to Paul about his mom not being in the obituary, and Paul over here is acting all nonchalant and doesn't give a fuck. So Zach is tired of his weird behavior.
Maybe when you die, I won't put in an obituary.
That would be your choice to make. Assuming you outlive me.
Gabby is still having an affair with her underage boy Gardner, and she's clearly not thinking straight because a little girl sees her through the front door and she runs away. She goes all around town looking for her, and she finds her talking to Carlos. The little girl ends up blackmailing Gabby the whole episode, but she doesn't actually say anything to Carlos, so we move. Since Tom doesn't want to go to the dinner party, Lynette's like, I'm not staying here, so you're gonna have to watch the kids. And he's like, okay, they're just kids. How hard could it be? And Lynette's like, oh, okay.
You know our rule about eating cookies, right?
Yeah, we can't have them after 5 because sugar makes us hyper.
Yeah. But tonight, anything goes. Make sure you share with your brothers.
Thanks, Mom.
Susan is trying to get over her ex-husband leaving her for another woman, so all she asks from him is an apology, and he's like, you want me to apologize for falling in love? So she follows him outside in a towel, and when he scurries off, the towel goes with him, and now she's running around the streets naked because she locked herself out of her house. Until Mike finds her in the bushes and he helps her get into her house, and he says he'll come to dinner with her. At the dinner party, everything is going well until Rex spills the beans to Carlos on him and Bree going to see a marriage counselor, and she pretends like the whole thing didn't happen because she's not going to be embarrassed at her own party. Remember the chest Paul threw into the lake? Yeah, it ended up getting discovered by some people, so now the police have it. And it turns out that there were actually human remains in that chest. All this was on the news while Zach was sleeping, so when Paul leaves the room, Zach wakes up and hears the whole thing. It's not looking good for Paul. Back at the dinner party, everyone's sharing embarrassing stories to make it less awkward for Bree, but she's still mad at Rex, so she says this.
Rex cries after he ejaculates.
The next day, Rex packs all of his things and he leaves. Tom clearly sees that the boys are a real piece of work, so he plans a little date night for him and Lynette so she can relax. So that's a start, I guess. Bree goes to the therapist's office to beg him to tell her what Rex said during their session, and he's like, I have a client, you need to go. So she goes into the cabinet to try to find Rex's audio file, but she ends up finding the one for Mary Alice and she takes it with her. The episode ends with Paul putting up a for sale sign in front of the house. In episode 4, Bree and the girls are listening to the tape Bree stole from her therapist's office, and on the tape, they hear Mary Alice say her real name is Angela. So clearly, she has a lot of secrets. Gabby is still with her underage boy Gardner yet again in the hot tub, but this time they were extra stupid because he left a sock under the bed. She also has a cable guy over to fix something, and because her and John were rushing out, they leave water on the floor, so the cable guy slips and he ends up in the hospital. Andrew and Danielle, Bree's kids, notice that Rex is not at the house and they ask Bree about it, and she's like, oh, he's at a medical conference, guys, don't worry. They know this is a lie, and they somehow put all of the blame on Bree. Well, Andrew does. Martha comes over to Susan's because she found out from Edie that Susan likes Mike, so the wheels start turning in her head. She comes by with pie because she's never empty-handed, and she's like, so Susan, you like Mike, don't you? And Susan's like, yeah, he's cool, I guess. And Martha's like, cut the cameras.
Oh, good Lord, Susan, you burned your rival's house down. If that isn't desperate, I don't know what is.
She says she's not going to say anything, but we don't trust her. Carlos is getting suspicious of Gabby, so when he goes into their bedroom, he ends up finding the sock that John left behind. And he knows it's not his. But Gabby is quick on her feet, and she says, no, Carlos, our maid literally uses them to dust. We've got to respect the intelligence. The girls called Paul over to give him the purple letter, and he starts crying, and then he storms out. Andrew starts acting like a little brat trying to stay out late and stuff, and Bree's had enough of his antics, so she finds out he's at a bar, and she breaks into his room to find out where he's at. How he was able to get into a bar? We'll never know. He doesn't want to leave, so Bree ends up sitting with him to watch the strippers at the bar just to annoy him, which is such Bree behavior. Martha starts blackmailing Susan by getting her to pay for a bunch of her things, and the only thing Susan can think of is to tell her 11-year-old daughter about it because clearly Julie is a lot smarter than her. So they concoct a plan to get back the measuring cup so Martha can't use it as leverage by throwing their frisbee into her backyard. So Julie runs into the house and she gets it back. Carlos doesn't buy Gabby's sock story, so he talks to John to ask about the cable guy being over since John was working that day. John is like, yeah, I think the cable guy was over. I don't remember. And Carlos is like, you don't have to lie for Gabby. Tell me the truth. And John is like, I want no part. So Carlos finds where the cable guy lives, and keep in mind the cable guy literally just got out of the hospital and he beats him up real bad because he thinks he's sleeping with his wife. But he realizes it's not him because oops, the cable guy is gay. Paul goes to Lynette and Gabby saying, yeah, sorry I was weird. It's because Mary Alice was always writing these little letters to herself. So that letter y'all found, yeah, she wrote it. And they think he's lying, so now they don't trust him. Episode 5 opens up with the lady leaving her cat with Susan to watch while she goes on a trip. And I don't know why you would make a terrible decision like this. Some man breaks into the woman's house while Susan is there but doesn't actually take anything. But now the entire town is in a frenzy, so they form some kind of neighborhood watch, which also seems like a terrible idea. I don't think any of these people are actually capable of keeping trouble away except for maybe Bree. At the neighborhood watch meeting, Susan gives this police officer a screwdriver that was left at the scene. And the officer is low-key flirting with Susan, but right now she's focused on Mike. Lynette is trying to get her boys into this prestigious school that Bree's kids used to go to, so she goes to Bree to ask for a recommendation.
You, want me to recommend the twins?
Yes, you can tell them how beautifully behaved the boys are.
So you want me to lie?
Yeah, thought that was understood.
How about we don't ask dumb questions, Lynette? But Bree tells the school about the boys anyways, and the interview goes kind of okay, that is, until it's said that the boys are actually twins. And the interviewer goes, twins? Oh, we love diversity over here. Bring them in so we can meet them. Carlos's mother comes by to visit, and she does not like Gabby. Turns out Carlos actually asked her to come to talk to her about Gabby maybe cheating on him.
So you think she's cheating on you?
I think so.
We can talk about your problems, but I'm not going to have any of that.
Oh, I didn't expect that. Anyway, she says, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Susan kind of fumbled things with Mike, so she decides to go on a date with a cop that's working on the break-in investigation since her and Mike aren't really speaking. Susan goes to talk to Mike about her date, and he's like, what do you want? After she leaves, we then see that a screwdriver is missing from Mike's garage. That's interesting. Also, the police officer turned out to be a weirdo. Are we shocked? No. Lynette preps her boys for the school interview by making them do a boot camp so they're incredibly tired to make it physically impossible for them to ruin it. I think this is great parenting here. She's putting her work experience to good use. It actually works because the boys are literally too tired at the school interview to act like their normal selves, so 5 points for Lynette. Carlos's mother gets to work because when Gabby goes to meet with her underage boy Gardner for another hookup, she says she needs to go to the store. Carlos's mom is like, let me come too. I need some stuff. Mike goes to meet with some random man in the woods, and he tells him that he broke into that lady's house and is gonna get caught because he left behind a screwdriver with his fingerprints on it. And Mike is like, I need to leave, like now. And the guy's like, don't leave until someone figures out what you're up to. Bree invites Zach over to dinner because he's all alone and also kind of strange, but she's nice, so why not? At the dinner, Zach says that Mary Alice offed herself because of something he did, but before Bree can get another explanation, he flees out the door. Bree tells the girls about it, and they're like, get more information from him by any means necessary. So Bree does what she knows best. Cook amazing food to get what she wants. She tells Zach to come over for another dinner because she's in a holiday mood, but Rex later comes to her saying that they should go out on a little date, so she cancels on Zach, and he acts really weird about it. Gabby is tired of Juanita, Carlos's mom, following her, so she frames her for shoplifting and manages to escape from her because Juanita gets taken away by the police. Rex and Bree get called to the house because someone broke in, but when they get inside, the entire house is covered in Christmas decor. And Bree's like, oh, he kind of crazy. She feels bad for Zach, so she doesn't actually press charges or anything. But Paul comes back and is like, yeah, you're done. So they pack up all their things and they leave town. Gabby and Juanita have a little conversation where she makes it pretty clear that she knows she's cheating on her son, so she needs to be careful. Lynette gets her boys into the school by paying them like $15,000, and they had to do this by selling Tom's boat, but all in the name of education. Mike and Susan end up making up, so they're good now. Paul comes back to the lane to handle some stuff before him and Zach move away for good, but Zach is nowhere to be found. Paul says he's away with relatives, but no one's buying that story. But really, Zach is actually at some mental rehab facility because I guess he has some problems. Zach gets diagnosed with depression and BPD, so the doctor puts him on some meds, but he also wants to do some therapy to uncover some hidden past trauma. And Paul is like, whoa, he doesn't need all that. Just keep giving him the drugs. Rex and Bree are still going to their counseling sessions, but during it, he mentions that their sex life is bad because Bree is always thinking about something else during it. So Rex and the counselor come up with the bright idea to bring in a sex coach with them, and you can imagine how Bree reacts to this.
Do you have any questions?
Just one. How much longer is your midlife crisis going to last? Because it is really starting to tick me off.
Since Carlos and Juanita are on to Gabby, she hasn't been seeing her underage boy Gardner as much, and he's getting tired of waiting, so who does he start hanging out with? Danielle. Susan starts spying on Paul to figure out where he's keeping Zach hostage, so she follows him to the rehab center, and now she knows where Zach is. Juanita ends up joining the girls at their weekly poker game, and she's actually quite good at it. So when Gabby tells Carlos about it, he's like, oh no. She's gambling again. Yeah, apparently Juanita has a really bad gambling addiction, and Gabby's like, that's interesting information. So she drops Juanita at a buffet with a casino so she can meet up with her underage boy Gardner, so all is well again. Actually, it's not, because Juanita ended up losing like $15,000 on Carlos's credit card. So yeah, but Gabby fixes it, so it's all good. Bree goes to meet Rex at his hotel to seduce him, but it flops because she gets distracted by a burrito he throws on the nightstand that's about to fall on the floor, and he gets mad about it for some reason. Who was gonna clean it up? Susan goes to Julie with a plan to break into the rehab center to get to Zach. Julie talks to Zach and he tells her that something happened to a little girl named Dana, but that's all that he says. Rex comes to the house to yell at Bree, and at this point, she's tired of him. She's like, honestly, I don't think I'm the issue. You clearly have a problem with something, so what is it? And he's like, okay, fine, you got me. But he doesn't actually tell her anything. Juanita uses her very detailed observation skills to figure out that Gabby is having an affair with her underage boy Gardner, John. So we'll see what happens with that. The episode ends with us being shown a blanket Paul gave to Susan at his garage sale, and on it is the name Dana. So Dana might be a baby. Oh, okay. In the next episode, Paul meets with a private investigator to figure out who sent Mary Alice the note that made her off herself. The investigator does some digging and turns out that the letter was sent from a post office in the neighborhood, which means that the sender was most likely someone that lived on Wisteria Lane. Also, he's not a private investigator at all. He's a hitman. Andrew gets in trouble at school for shoving some boy's head into a locker. When Rex and Bree are talking to the principal about it, he chooses that specific time to announce he's divorcing her.
Mrs. Stark, you handle this however you see fit.
Bree, I've gone to an attorney. You're gonna be served with divorce papers later today.
You went to an attorney?
Yeah, and a good one too.
Well, he better be good, because when I'm finished with you, you won't have a cent to your name.
Get him. Get him again for me. Mike and Susan are having their first date, and she's been waiting for this moment her whole life. But then some lady randomly shows up to Mike's and he mysteriously cancels. Edie is trying to sell Paul's house since she's a realtor and whatnot, and she ends up leaving her folder at his place and he finds purple stationery in it. The same one as the letter. So now he's thinking she's the reason his wife's dead. Gabby is mad that John, her underage boy Gardner, is hanging out with Danielle and she's not having this, so she finds a way to get rid of her.
Remember when you said you wanted to be a model?
You remember that? That was like last summer.
Well, as it turns out, Project Modeling Academy has an opening for their summer program. Would you like me to sponsor you?
Bree doesn't let Danielle go, but at least Gabby tried. Remember the random woman that showed up to Mike's? Yeah, her name is Kendra, and she's actually the daughter of the man he went to go meet up with in the woods to discuss his findings on the lane. Kendra's like, you've been here for 1,000,000 years and you still haven't found anything yet? Kendra wants Mike to stop looking for whatever he's looking for because her dad has become really obsessed with it and she just wants him to move on with his life, but Mike's not gonna quit. Turns out Mike is looking for that man's daughter, so Kendra's sister, and she went missing a really long time ago. Rex tries to buy off the kids by giving Danielle cute luggage for her trip to New York and Andrew a brand new car. Bree is not having this and she tells them to give the gifts back. Rex is like, they're my kids too, so they can have the gifts. Bree then decides to be petty and she kicks the kids out of the house until they give up the gifts, but only Danielle folds. Andrew then runs away like a little boy to his father's, begging to live with him because Bree is so terrible, and Rex is like, no, you can't live with me. So Andrew storms out to his new car to call his friend.
Heath? Yeah, it's me. Do you still have your fake ID? Yeah, I've got to go home and kiss my mother's ass, and I'm not going to do it sober.
Also, Lynette is addicted to her kid's ADD medication, so there's that. Susan follows Kendra and Mike to this dive bar, and when she gets caught, she does something stupid per usual.
Baby!
But more important than that, Kendra tells Susan to ask Mike what was the real reason he moved on to Wisteria Lane. And Susan's like, well, what's the tea? Gabby is done with her underage boy Gardner, so they hook up again, but just for the one time, and Juanita catches them in the act. Gabby shockingly just doesn't care that much. She just starts packing all of her things. Meanwhile, John is downstairs tussling with Juanita for that camera. Juanita somehow fights him off, so she runs out into the street and something bad happens. Turns out the car that hit her was the little brat Andrew. He comes crying to Bree saying he did something bad.
I need your help, honey. There's been an accident. Andrew?
Mama?
Don't piss me off. The Vandekamps are in the kitchen trying to figure out what to do because Andrew hit Juanita like the dumbass he is, and Bree is the only one acting logical here.
We have to get rid of the car. But we can't sell it. The police might find it and there could be DNA. We'll take the car to a bad part of town. We'll leave the keys in the ignition and the doors unlocked.
Is it controversial? Yes. Is it a genius plan? Absolutely. Juanita is now in a coma and Carlos is really going through it, but Gabby's perfectly fine. Paul meets with the hitman to get rid of Edie since he thinks she's the one that sent the letter to marry Alice, and the hitman's like, all right, but no refunds. The Vandekamps go to check in on Carlos and Gabby, but really, they just want to find out if Juanita's gonna die. During their conversation, Carlos randomly says that him and Gabby are gonna have kids.
You guys are the future. Legacy.
Thanks.
Gabrielle and I are about to start a family.
That sounded like a threat. Andrew does not feel any kind of remorse for what he did, and Bree is getting very concerned because clearly there is something very wrong with him. The hitman Paul hired is about to finish the job when Edie reveals some interesting information.
Nice stationery.
Oh, it's stolen.
What do you mean?
After my house burned down, I was staying with this neighbor, Martha Huber. That is until the old troll threw me out. Anyway, I'd steal her stuff, she'd steal mine. It's the circle of life.
A bad bitch like Edie would never use purple stationery. Can we please be serious here? Lynette hits rock bottom and she leaves her kids with Susan of all people to get away for a bit. Susan and Bree find her at the park and Lynette tells them about how she's been taking her kids' ADD medicine and how she's been feeling for quite some time.
I love my kids so much. I'm so sorry they have me as a mother.
Lynette, you're a great mother.
No, I'm not.
I blame Tom for this. Paul goes to Martha's for a little visit to ask her why she sent the letter to marry Alice. And she's like, yeah, I sent her the letter. And what about it?
Don't you feel any remorse whatsoever?
Why should I? Your wife didn't kill herself because I wrote a note. She killed herself because of what she did to that poor baby.
Paul is fuming now. So, he kills her. In episode 9, Gabby is feeling a little bored with her life at the moment, so she wants to do something to contribute to society. So she decides to throw a little fashion show to raise money for the understaffed nurses at the hospital. We love a generous party throwing girly. Meanwhile, Paul is hard at work getting rid of Martha's body, because he kind of killed her the other day. Tom tries to be helpful for once and take the kids off of Lynette's hands since she was literally addicted to their ADD medication because she was so stressed. And she's like, thanks, but that doesn't really solve our problems. We need a nanny ASAP. Tom's like, is it really necessary? Well, yes. Bree is now spiraling because Andrew is some kind of sociopath since he doesn't feel bad for literally sending Carlos's mom to the hospital in a coma. And she's like, yeah, we gotta do something.
I think we should make him quit the swim team.
Bree, this is the one thing in his life that he's passionate about.
Well, maybe if we take it away from him, then he'll start to understand what he did. He has not shown an ounce of remorse since the accident.
Of course he feels bad. He's just, you know, keeping up a facade.
Get him a new father immediately. Gabby's underage boy gardener John is forced to work the fashion show by his mom, who's also working the show, and she hears from her that him and Danielle might break up, and Gabby's now very happy about this, so she's all handsy with John, but very discreet, of course. Clearly it wasn't discreet enough because Susan sees Gabby putting her foot in a not so nice place on John. So obviously she talks to Gabby about it. She's not gonna keep this to herself. Gabby tells her that they were sleeping together but not anymore, and Susan's like, yeah, that's very weird and very illegal. She's also especially mad about it because Carl, her ex-husband, literally cheated on her with another woman, and Gabby's now cheating on Carlos, so Susan's now looking at Gabby very weird. John and his friend are playing a little basketball game, but more importantly, they talk about his relationship with Gabby and how he now wants to break up with Danielle. And while they're having this conversation, John's mom hears the whole thing.
But on the upside, your social status in school is going to explode when people find out you're doing a hot housewife.
Shut up, dude.
Zach sneaks out of the mental hospital, so now no one knows where he is, but it's all good. He just ran to Julie's. Lynette finds a nanny at the park with some kids, and she convinces her to work as her nanny, so good for her. John goes to talk to Susan since she knows that him and Gabby have been getting it on, and his mom follows him there and sees the two of them talking. So now she thinks Susan is the housewife sleeping with her son. So at the fashion show, John's mom finds Susan, and it's on site.
For God's sake, Helen, this is for charity!
All this happening while Isn't She Lovely is playing is just peak cinema. Remember how Bree wanted to take Andrew off the swim team? Yeah, she finds out he's been smoking some weed, so she plants it in his locker to make sure his coach finds it, so now he gets kicked off. Zach plans to run away, and Julie gives him some pocket change since neither of them have jobs. And Julie tells Zach that she knows all about Dana, so now he starts spilling the beans on what's been going on. Zach thinks he killed Dana since Mary, Alice, and Paul literally never let him talk about it, and that they buried Dana to protect him. Gabby feels guilty about Susan getting her ass beat by John's mom, so she tells John's mom that it was her getting it on with her son, and obviously it doesn't go well.
For how long?
Almost a year. But it's over now.
So, when it started, he was 16?
Some police officers go to this custom chest maker to ask him about a chest that he made like 10 years ago for an ongoing investigation that they're doing, and some interesting information comes from it.
Was there anything in the chest?
It had a body inside. Adult female.
Yeah, but how do you fit a body into a chest that size?
It was chopped up.
Carlos gets arrested out of nowhere, and he says his business partner set him up. Episode 10 opens up with one of the moms on the lane, Maisie, running a little business where some husbands pay her for services they're not getting at home. And guess who shows up on her doorstep as her upcoming appointment? Rex's trifling self. Are we surprised? Absolutely not. It is the day of Carlos's hearing, and he's being charged for illegal activity with his business partner who's already fled the country, so it's not looking good for him. Zach is still hiding in Julie's room, and Susan has no idea he's in the house, and Julie's like, Zach, like, this has gone on for long enough. Let's just tell my mom. And he's like, you know what? It's fine. I'm just gonna go. Obviously, Julie doesn't let him go, so she just keeps him in the room. Rex comes back home late from his little rendezvous, and because Bree isn't stupid, she knows he was with someone else. And he's like, well, we're separated, so I can do what I want, and you should get some too. I really hate this man. Martha has been missing for like 50 years now, and no one seems to care except for Edie, so she decides to do some investigating to figure out what is going on. The police are looking for Carlos's passport so he can't flee like his business partner, so Gabby is trying to find it to keep it from them, and their maid is very confused.
It's very important that we find Carlos's passport. I already looked through his office, so I need you to search the bedroom.
What? With Mr. Solis in jail, how are you going to pay me? I have children.
I see no issues with this. She's asking the right questions. Also, a towing man comes and takes Gabby's car. Mike and Susan have been trying to find a day to get it on while Julie isn't home, but it's been flopping. So Susan waits till Julie finally leaves the house, so she's setting up the house for her man, and she ends up finding Zach. So Susan's like, yeah, he's gotta go. Rex and Maisie are doing the deed again, except oops, he has a heart attack, so now he ends up in the hospital. Bree gets called to the hospital and she finds this whole thing suspicious, so she digs and finds out that Maisie checked him in. I don't know, sometimes people deserve to suffer illness. Julie is mad at Susan for kicking Zach to the curb, and Susan's like, well, I'm your mother, so what I say goes. And Julie's like, don't piss me off.
Like it or not, I've got a birth certificate that says I'm your mother.
Since when?
What is that supposed to mean?
Since Dad left, if there's been a mother around here, it's been me.
Well, did she lie? Gabby's lawyer tells Gabby to get rid of all of her things because the police are gonna come and repo it, and she's like, oh, say less. So when the police come by to take her things, everything's gone.
To Solis, warrant into your house and repossess any goods which we suspect may have been obtained illegally.
We're not into clutter.
Lynette's new nanny is doing great, but a little too great because now her boys like her a little bit too much, and Lynette will not have this. It's all good though because Lynette sabotages her with the boys so they act crazy with her, so she's cool with Claire now. Bree goes to see Rex in the hospital, and now that he's all better, she's very glad so she can tell him what's tea.
I am no longer your wife. I am gonna go out and find the most vindictive lawyer I can find, and together we are going to eviscerate you. I am gonna take away your money, your family, and your dignity.
Felicia, Martha's sister, randomly shows up and says she thinks something bad has happened to Martha. But Felicia's a little weird.
And then when she didn't arrive at my home as scheduled, well, that's when I knew she was dead.
Oh, honey, no. You mustn't think like that. Martha's only missing.
No, Edie, she's dead.
Well, now we know it runs in the family. So now everyone on the lane knows that Martha's missing, so everyone's now looking for her. Carlos's bank accounts are now frozen, and Gabby is in crisis mode. She's running out of money. Their lawyer is like, well, I can get the government to unfreeze a small account and get him out on bail if we give them his passport, but Gabby burned his passport, so now she has to get a job. Lynette makes Tom go set up the coffee maker late at night because she knows he's not going to do it in the morning. And when Tom goes downstairs, he sees Claire, the nanny, naked because all her laundry is dirty. And he's looking at her a little bit too long. Rex is back home with Bree because Andrew's being a little brat and demanded his daddy be at home, so Bree is going to take care of him, but only for a little bit. Bree goes to get his prescription meds, and there she meets this pharmacist, George, and she ends up asking him out for a date, so good for her. The police find Martha's abandoned car, so now everyone's looking around that specific area for clues and whatnot. Also, Gabby gets a modeling job at the mall to make some extra money since she can't use Carlos's. We've got to respect the hustle here. Also, Lynette talks to Tom about seeing Claire naked, and she gags him real quick.
Why am I in trouble? I haven't done anything wrong.
The only reason you made love to me the other night was because you had just seen Claire naked.
What? Oh, crap.
So they end up letting Claire go. Andrew finds out that Rex has been cheating on Bree, so now all of a sudden he's on Bree's side, so good for him, I guess. Paul gets paranoid that the police are gonna link him to Martha's death, so he plants Martha's bracelet in Mike's garage to point the police in his direction. A man and his dog are on a little run, and the dog sniffs up a body in the ground. Ooh, it's getting real bad. It's the next day and Martha's body has been found, so now everyone knows that Martha's been killed, and shockingly, everyone's kind of sad about it. Well, everyone except for Felicia. Carlos is now released from jail, so he's back home, but he's on house arrest and therefore he cannot work. And Gabby's like, well, damn, then what was the point of them releasing you? The girls are at their weekly poker game talking about the tea with Martha. Edie comes by and says she wants to have a little wake for Martha to scatter her ashes since her sister doesn't want to do anything. And she asks the girls to come, and they don't want to. George and Bree are still dating, and she's really only doing this to make Rex feel some type of way, but either way, everything's going good. George even gifts her with an antique gun because she's into guns and stuff, which we're gonna overlook because we love Bree. Susan goes to check on Felicia since her sister died and whatnot, and Felicia's doing perfectly fine. Did something tragic happen? More importantly, Felicia mentions that the police want Martha's diary for clues into what happened, and she says that Martha wrote down everything about her life and everyone else's. That also includes Susan's little arson moment with Edie's house, so now she needs to go tell Edie and hope she doesn't put her in jail. Mike gets back to his house and it's been flipped upside down and someone took his money and he's like, cut the cameras.
Hey, Mike. As you can probably see by now, I took back my money and what little information you managed to dig up on your neighbors. Your replacement's gonna need it. Pack up and move on with your life.
Lynette's boys were playing around the house like boys do, and the twins end up putting gum in Parker's hair, so Lynette shaves it all off. Lynette has been trying to get into this yoga class that also has a daycare, but the daycare is literally always full. So this time around, when she comes to the yoga class early and still doesn't get in, this happens.
No, I planned ahead. We're 10 minutes early.
Oh my God.
What?
When you said you had a sick child, I had no idea. How long's it been?
Oh. No. See, here's the thing.
You go ahead into class. I'll find room for your kids.
Okay.
Susan tries to tell Edie about her burned house, but it flops, so instead she agrees to go with Martha to spread Martha's ashes. Bree takes George to go shooting, and it doesn't go that well.
Now all you have to do is take a deep breath and squeeze the trigger.
George! No! Oh, George! Oh my God!
I think he was being a little dramatic, personally. They end up going to the hospital, and Bree tells George that she just sees him as a friend. Mike goes to see the guy that took all his stuff, and we learn something kind of interesting.
You were never going to get somebody who cares as much about finding Deirdre as I do.
Why? Because you loved her so much?
Turns out Deirdre was Mike's ex and her father has cancer, so he's about to go like any minute and he needs to find out what happened to his daughter like now. So now Mike's back on the mission. Lynette keeps using her bald son to get into the yoga class, but this time it ends up flopping.
You are a tough little soldier.
Mommy, am I dying?
No, you're not dying. People just think that because I shaved your head.
I'm sorry, this is funny. George visits Bree and tells her that he's cool with just being friends, and Bree's like, no, George, you should be with someone that actually likes you. So that's kind of done. Susan and Edie go to dump Martha's ashes, and that's when she decides to tell her about the house.
I am so grateful that I still have a true friend. Thank you, Susan.
Edie, I burned your house down.
Huh?
I was scared that you were sleeping with Mike, and so I let myself in and I snuck around. I accidentally knocked a candle over and the whole just... I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me?
It's what she deserved. Carlos goes on and on about how he wants a baby, and when Gabby says no, he switches out her birth control pills for something else so they don't work anymore. I'm pretty sure that's illegal. The episode ends with George in his house watching a tape of him and Bree talking at the pharmacy. So clearly he's very weird. Susan catches Zach and Julie kissing in the living room, and she's like, "Get your hands off my daughter, weird boy." So now Julie's mad at her. John's parents come by to talk to Gabby because now he doesn't want to go to college and he just wants to mow lawns for a living. So they ask her to talk to him and knock some sense into him, and Gabby's like, "Yeah, I got a lot going on right now." John's mom is like, "Okay, well, it's either that or you go to jail for getting with a minor." And Gabby's like, "Let me see what I can do." Rex and Bree are talking with their divorce lawyers, and Rex has an epiphany or something.
This is integral to Dr. Vanderkamp's medical practice.
What are we doing here?
I'm sorry, Rex?
I'm talking to my wife. Surrounded by lawyers, dividing up our stuff. I don't want this. I thought I did, but I don't. Maybe we should talk this over before it's too late.
I really hate this man. But because Bree's not an idiot, she goes through with the divorce settlement. Susan goes to Paul about Zach kissing all up on her daughter, and Paul's like, "Don't worry, we're literally moving at the end of the month." Tom's dad comes by to visit, and Lynette catches him cheating on Tom's mom with another woman. And it turns out Tom knew about this for like a cool minute, and now Lynette's looking at him very weird, but we don't care about Tom, so we're just gonna move on. Rex tries to talk to Bree again to get her to forgive him and change her mind on the whole divorce thing, and Bree is like, "Okay, I'll think about forgiving you, but I'm gonna get with a man to get even." And Rex is like, whoa, I don't think that's the best idea. Bree then goes to a diner to think, and guess who randomly shows up? George. They talk and she vents to George about her problems, and he tells her that she should forgive Rex. But he's fuming about it. Gabby goes to talk to John about his bad decision making, and he's like, "No, this is the best decision for me."
For the longest time, the only thing I had to offer you was my heart. And Mr. Solis gave you security, and I couldn't compete. But now he can't even offer you that, and I can. My business is taking off. I can take care of you.
Yeah. Then he proposes to her. So she's like, "Yeah, you and me aren't gonna work, so you should go to college." Rex goes to the pharmacy to pick up some meds, but more importantly, to talk to George about him hanging out with Bree.
I just want you to know that she'd only be using you to even the score with me. Don't fall for it.
Bree would never do anything like that. She's a lady.
Exactly. Very beautiful, classy lady. Remember, they tend to end up with doctors, not pharmacists.
So now George conveniently can't find Rex's meds, so he says he'll have it shipped to their house. He then takes Rex's real prescription and switches it out. Susan overhears a conversation between Julie and Zach about Dana, but she doesn't really know the whole story, so she goes to Paul about it, and he ends up spilling the beans on everything.
Mary Alice and I never really knew. We heard the baby screaming. By the time we got up to the crib, it was too late.
Paul, I am so sorry.
But turns out all of this was a lie. Zach didn't actually do anything. Paul just said this to keep Susan away from the whole thing so she doesn't find out the real story. So when Paul tells this to Zach, Zach is like, "Okay, cool. But if you want me to keep this a secret, we're not moving anymore." Okay, back to Tom and Lynette. Turns out Tom has a little secret he's been keeping from her, and he's afraid of what will happen when she finds out. It's Valentine's Day tomorrow, so all the men on the street are preparing for the festivities. Well, except for Tom. He forgot about it. Again. So now he's scrambling, trying to figure something out. Susan tells the girls that the secret Mary Alice was keeping was that Zach killed baby Dana, but they still think the math isn't mathing completely. Felicia talks to Paul, and she recognizes Mary Alice's photo on the fridge, but she refers to her as Angela, Mary Alice's real name, and that they met in Utah a long time ago. Paul is like, "Oh, who said that?" So now Felicia's getting suspicious. Bree and Rex are officially back together, but she hasn't totally forgiven him yet because she still thinks he's hiding something. But at least she can host her legendary dinner parties again. Gabby is hard at work modeling, trying to pay the bills since Carlos can't leave the house. And she's tired. She's not built to work. Lynette is beefing with fellow neighbor Miss McCluskey because her boys are terrorizing her and stealing her things. And Lynette's like, "My boys would never steal your things, old lady." Rex and Bree are talking about their Valentine's Day plans, which includes getting it on. So Bree asks him what exactly he wants from her since he had an affair and whatnot, and his answer is pretty interesting.
I like to be dominated.
Huh?
Sexually.
Mike is still trying to carry out his mission, so he breaks into some guy's house to get some clues, but he ends up getting shot. But it's okay, he ends up getting stitched up by a doctor who's also in on the mission. Gabby gets fired from her modeling job, so now she's forced to work as a makeup store clerk at the mall. Mike and Susan go to their V-Day dinner, and he ends up popping his stitches because Susan was being her annoying, clumsy self, and he ends up fainting at the restaurant because he lost a lot of blood. Bree caves and gives in to Rex's fantasies, and he's really excited about it. Turns out the boys have not only been stealing Miss McCluskey's things, but literally everyone on the lane. So now Lynette and the boys have to go apologize to her, and shockingly it goes well.
Didn't you know that stealing is wrong? How old are you anyway?
We're 6.
And how old are you?
5.
Well, your mother just pops them out, doesn't she?
How old are you?
How old do you think?
150.
Someone needs to send the boys away. They do end up stealing something from Mike's garage, and it's the bracelet Martha was wearing when she died. Paul is an evil man. In episode 15, the girls talk about Martha's bracelet in Mike's garage, and none of them actually think he killed her, but they turn the bracelet into the police anyways. John's friend Justin offers to be Gabby's new gardener with the extra benefits, and she's like, ew. Go away. But he goes behind her back and gets Carlos to hire him anyways. Since the girls turned Mike in, he ends up getting arrested and taken in for questioning. They let him go though, but now he's like, who tried to frame me? Justin is being all weird to Gabby, and he tries to sleep with her.
Come on, Mrs. Solis, be nice. You shouldn't have done that.
Do you know how easy it would be for me to call my husband and tell him what you just tried to do?
Not as easy as it'd be for me to tell him what happened between you and John.
Why can't anyone be normal here? Tom gets a promotion that would require him to be away from home even more. And when Lynette's like, can we talk about this? Tom's like, there's nothing to talk about. I'm taking the job. Lynette, get yourself a new husband. Lynette goes to Justin to tell him that she's gonna tell John that he tried to blackmail her, and he's like, no, I had a good reason for it.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to blackmail you.
Then why did you?
I really needed to sleep with you.
Why?
Because I think I might be gay.
Oh, Lynette and the boys visit Tom in his new office, and she tells the boss's wife that she's happy for him, but he'll be away from the kids a lot. But she said she's happy for him though. Susan is brought in for questioning about Mike, and not only does she find out that he broke into some guy's house the other day, she also finds out that he has a criminal record. So now she wants no part with him. Remember how Lynette told the boss's wife that she's not happy with his promotion? Yeah, his boss takes it away from him. So now Lynette feels a little bad. Gabby tells Carlos that they should sell the house because they're literally broke. But she says everything's gonna be okay, which is actually very shocking. Zach has a little party and finds out that Julie snuck out, so when she goes to find her, she finds something interesting.
Oh, you might as well just stay under there and never come up for air, because when you do, I'm gonna choke the living daylights out of you. Is my daughter under there?
Oh. Maisie gets arrested for her little business she's been running. So now everyone in the neighborhood knows what she's been up to. Susan's been avoiding Mike and she has no idea what to do with herself, so I'm gonna feel bad for her for about 5 seconds. Okay, I'm done. Rex has been feeling weird for a little minute and he's very confused as to why his heart meds aren't working. Him and Bree are talking about it and someone tells Bree about Maisie being arrested.
Maisie was arrested. While Harold was at work, she was having sex with men in her house for money. Can you imagine?
No, I can't.
And that's not even the best part. Word is, she had a little black book with all her clients' names.
Paul and Felicia talk about Mike killing Martha, and Felicia is now very suspicious of Paul. She knows he killed her. She also tells him that he should visit Utah. It's beautiful this time of year. And Paul is like, Utah? What do you know about Utah? So he watches an old tape from the house and sees Mary Alice and Felicia on it. So now he's like, oh, She gotta go. Carlos and Gabby's house pipes are broken or something, and they can't shower or use the bathroom. So they're scrambling to clean themselves since they can't afford to fix it. So Gabby steals a porta potty from a construction site for them. Bree goes to visit Maisie in jail and asks her to remove Rex's name from her book of clients because she's not trying to be humiliated. Maisie's like, I don't like you, so no. Edie and Susan go out to a bar because they're cool now, I guess. So Susan catches Edie up on all the tea with Mary Alice and that Paul's being kind of weird about Martha's death. And Edie's like, well, girl, I literally have the keys to his house. Let's break in and get some clues. Maisie's client list comes out, so now everyone knows about Rex's loser ways, and he's now embarrassed all of a sudden, and he wants to walk out on dinner, and Bree is like, not on my watch.
Rex, if you walk out of this restaurant, I will scream.
Bree?
I will scream about your cruelty. Then I will scream about your infidelity. And then just to make sure it really hurts, I will scream about your distasteful sexual habits. You want to know what true humiliation is? You just take one step.
Edie and Susan get into Paul's house and finds the tape that Paul watched earlier, but it kind of flops and they aren't able to watch it. Bree figures out that Gabby has been having money troubles, so she doesn't renew her country club membership and she gives the money to Gabby. A bad bitch will always save another one in a crisis. In the next episode, Juanita now wakes up from her 5-month coma, and the first thing she wants to do is call Carlos and tell him about Gabby and John, but she slips down some stairs and she dies. Before she goes, though, she's leaving here with something.
Tell my son his wife is cheating on him. Oh my God.
Sadly for Juanita, this was one dream that would never come true.
We have to appreciate the dedication to her craft. Susan still isn't talking to Mike, so he writes her a letter with all the details about his past criminal life so she can trust him again. Andrew gets caught smoking at school, so now he gets expelled. And Bree is getting tired, so off to a summer juvenile delinquent camp for him. Carlos gets a plea deal from the court, but he doesn't want to take it because he would still have to go to jail for a little bit. And Gabby's like, well, if you take it, then we can keep the house. Pick a struggle. The hospital also calls and tells them Juanita is gone, and Gabby is very happy about it. Andrew is being a little brat to Bree once again, and for once, Rex does something about it.
No idea how to help you.
Well, you can start by getting out of the way.
I will not. We're going to talk about this now.
I said get out of the way.
The next time you touch your mother like that, I'm gonna throw you through this wall. You understand me?
This guy that Edie's been going out with asks Susan out on a date, and when Susan goes to ask Edie if she can go out with him, she obviously says no. And Susan can't understand why, because it's not like they're in a relationship, and Edie's like, well, because we're friends, and that's weird. And Susan cannot comprehend the concept of being a friend, so she goes out with him anyways. Carlos, on the other hand, has a change of heart and decides to take the plea bargain to let Gabby keep the house. But he says that when he's gone, she better not be with another man, and she says okay. Andrew gets taken to juvenile delinquent camp, and he's not having it.
Wait! Mom, wait! Please, I'm sorry, Mom,
Honey,
please!
It's gonna be okay, I promise.
No, this was your idea.
Why, you little...
Lock him up for life. Edie finds Susan on her little date, and she rightfully clears her.
Edie.
Your foreman said that you were out on a date with a hottie. Evidently, someone's in need of LASIK.
The hospital bribes Gabby with money since Juanita fell down some stairs on their watch, and they're not trying to get sued. And Gabby takes that money immediately, but Carlos still needs to go to jail so she can actually keep it and the government doesn't take it away. So off to jail he goes. And the episode ends with Susan giving back Mike's letter before ever reading it. Paul is being questioned by the police about the chest he threw into the river, and he's like, yeah, I don't know what chest y'all are talking about. Zach, on the other hand, remembers it well. So now Zach is looking at Paul funny. What's the tea? And Paul's like, okay, calm down. Let me explain myself.
Look, I know that you're lying to me, okay? I know that you're lying.
For the last time, someone came and tried to take you away from us.
Yes, a woman. A woman came.
Yes, she tried to steal you from the only family that you ever really known. And we couldn't let that happen.
That lawyer that bribed Gabby shows up at the house to talk about the agreement, and now Carlos knows about the money and he's pissed. Gabby's like, I don't know why you're mad. I literally saved us from being poor. You should be thanking me. Susan's mom comes to visit Susan, and she's like her 2.0, or I guess the original version.
It's nice meeting you anyway, Mike.
You too. And I never would have guessed that you're Susan's mom.
I know. I look too young. I got pregnant when I was a tiny teenager. Okay.
Oh my God. Lynette forces Bree to care for her kids so she can go out with some friends, and Bree, being the good friend she is, says yes. Obviously, the boys are being menaces, and unlike Lynette, Bree doesn't play.
It was an accident.
Porter, I warned you.
I'm sorry, I'll be good.
Those cookies were made from scratch. Your fate is sealed. Come here.
No. Ow!
I'm not saying you should hit other people's kids. I'm just saying I'm not that mad at this. Lynette finds out about it and she's like, why would you do that?
Lynette, is there a problem?
Tom and I don't believe in hitting our kids. I thought you knew that.
Sorry, I didn't know. It won't happen again. Of course, I'm somewhat surprised you don't spank them. I mean, everybody knows they're a little bit out of control.
Well, yours kind of killed a woman, but okay. I understand Lynette's reasoning for it, but we have to come up with another solution. Ma'am, your kids are terrorizing the street. Felicia is talking with Zach about his mom, and she tells him that she met him when he was a baby. All this makes Zach really emotional, but we don't have time for that. Felicia gets to work.
You want to know what else I remember? How lovely your original name was.
Dana.
Well, whose bright idea was it to name him Dana? Carlos and Gabby are fighting now because he no longer trusts her, so now he wants her to sign a post-nup that says if she tries to leave him, she gets no money. And when she says no, he forces her anyways?
Stop! You're hurting me, Carlos!
Sign it. Sign it!
Bree and Rex go visit Andrew at juvenile delinquent camp, and he tells them he's gay, and Bree doesn't take it that well.
Andrew just told me he thinks he might be gay.
What?
That's why he wanted me to come in first. He thought I could take it better.
Well, he was right. I will be waiting in the car.
Gabby goes to see John since Carlos got all handsy with her, and he notices the bruise on her arm. He's like, I'm gonna go beat his ass, and Gabby's like, no, don't worry about it, just sleep with me. So now the affair's back on. Lynette and Miss McCluskey are beefing like normal, but Miss McCluskey has a little heart attack in the middle of the street, and Lynette calls the ambulance and goes with her. Look at her being all neighborly. That man Mike has been working for tells Mike that the police found his daughter's body in the chest Paul threw in the river. So the entire time that he's been looking for her, she's been in that chest for like 15 years, so that's really sad. He's also working with one of the cops on the case, so he wants Mike to meet with him to find out who killed his daughter. Bree and Rex think Andrew being gay is just some kind of weird teenage thing, and it's not anything to really worry about. Gabby's trying to figure out how to leave Carlos because he cut up all her credit cards and he kind of assaulted her, but she can't because she has no money. John is like, well, take my card if you want to go shopping. And at first she's like, no, John, I can't. But she does anyways. Gabby goes a little crazy on his credit card, and because he's literally 18 and doesn't have money like that, it gets declined. But it's all good, she finds another man to pay for it. Bree invites the reverend from their church to their house to come and fix Andrew, but it doesn't go that well.
At least I'm trying to be proactive.
Please, there's no need to get upset.
I am upset because there is a problem here and no one seems to notice it but me.
As far as I'm concerned, if Andrew is happy with who he is, then it is our job to support him.
Who knew Rex was okay with gay? We love that for him. Gabby realizes she doesn't need Carlos and there's other men with money, so she goes to him like, rip up the post-nup or I'm walking out the door. And he does. So Gabby wins. Bree begs Andrew to talk to the Reverend again so he can fix his gayness because she's not very be who you are for your pride about it.
You don't think I'll go to heaven?
No, I don't. And I need you there. I would be so lonely without you.
I guess I better go talk to Reverend Sykes.
Andrew, thank you so much. You don't know how much that means to me.
Mike gets the case file with all the suspects, and guess who's on it? So the police aren't complete idiots for once. Oh, okay. Andrew talks to the Reverend and says he's not gay. He likes everyone. He doesn't discriminate. He also said he's gonna ruin his mother's life. And since he told the Reverend, he's not allowed to say anything to her. Julie and Zach are no longer speaking because she realized he was on some weird, violent demon time, and Zach is trying to get her back by throwing rocks at her window. Julie tells him to leave her alone and get a life. George starts obsessing over Bree and follows her and Rex like everywhere, and he asks Rex how he's been doing.
So, how's your health?
Not good. And my cardiologist is an idiot.
The doctor upped his dosage twice, and it's still not helping.
I'm sure it'll all work itself out.
He also invites Bree to some kind of flower show on Friday, and she says yes since they're just friends. Gabby is shopping for a new car since they have money again, but she's feeling a little nauseous and she ends up throwing up in the car. The car sales lady is like, yeah, girl, you pregnant. Lynette goes into Tom's office and sees this lady, Annabelle, who was Tom's ex right before meeting Lynette, but moved right after her and Tom got together. So she's very confused as to why she's here, and Tom forgot to mention that she's been here for the last 3 months. Paul goes to Edie because he found it suspicious that she was in his house. And at first she's like, I was just dropping off your key, remember? And he's like, girl. And she's like, okay, fine. You got it out of me.
Okay, Susan made me do it. She has this fixation on why Mary Alice killed herself, and she keeps blathering on about blackmail notes and dead babies.
Mike overhears this entire conversation and finds that pretty interesting. Rex tells Bree that she shouldn't go out with George because he's still in love with her, and she's like, what? No, you've got it all wrong. We're besties. And he's like, don't be dumb. You'd be leading him on. So she goes to George to cancel on their Friday plans, and he's like, oh, I like someone else.
The truth is, I'm in love with Ginger.
Ginger? The stock girl?
Yes. It's very serious.
So Bree invites him and his new girl to Carlos's going away barbecue that Gabby's throwing. Lynette tells Tom to get rid of Annabelle, and he's like, no. Felicia has a little flashback to when her and Martha were having a little conversation about Mary Alice, or to Felicia, Angela.
Angela and I worked together with a very disturbed young woman who gave birth to a baby boy. About a year later, Angela and her husband disappeared. Not long after that, I heard that the child was missing too.
So turns out Paul and Mary Alice stole baby Zach from his druggy mother. Gabby finds out she actually is pregnant, but she's quite confused because she's on the pill. Lynette goes to Edie for help getting rid of Annabelle, and she gives her some much needed advice. So now Lynette gets to work getting close to Annabelle, so she invites her over to dinner with her and Tom, but it doesn't go very well.
God, Lynette, you're just so convinced that I'm going to be unfaithful. It makes me sick. The distrust, the paranoia. No, it seems like you're not going to be happy until you drive me out of this marriage just to prove yourself right.
Paul wants to get out of town since Susan is onto him, but Zach doesn't want to leave Julie. And Paul's like, you idiot. She don't like you no more. Let's go. And Zach's like, no. Paul goes to Susan to give her the information she was looking for about Mary Alice, or some kind of version of it.
It was Mary Alice's birth name. She was named after her aunt Angela. When she was a teenager, they had a falling out, so she changed her name to Mary Alice. This is before we were married, so you'll forgive me if I'm hazy on the details.
That's it? That's the explanation?
Ridiculously simple, isn't it?
Susan isn't really buying it, but she's done looking for clues. Everyone is at Carlos's going away to jail party, and George comes with his clerk Ginger as his date. Rex is mad that Bree invited him, but she's gonna keep hanging out with him anyways. Zach finds Julie at the party, and she tells him again to leave her alone, and now he's mad. Gabby runs upstairs because she's feeling nauseous again, and she looks at her birth control pills and sees they've been messed with. So now she's about to fuck shit up.
Carlos, you son of a bitch! I am pregnant and it's all your fault!
She talks to Susan about how she doesn't know who the father is, and then randomly, Susan's house blows up, and her first thought is that evil man Paul did it. So she calls a PI to look into him, and turns out it's the man that worked with him a little while ago. The episode ends with Zach holding a lighter and him looking at a picture collage of Julie. Gabby is fuming about Carlos messing with her pills, and he's like, I didn't do it. Maybe it was my mom. And for some reason, she believes him. Bree and George are still hanging out, and while they're at dinner, Edie sees Bree feed George some food off her plate. And she's like, oh, I wasn't familiar with your game, girl. Lynette and Tom are planning on doing the deed because they haven't done it in like 10 days, but it very much flops.
I just like it when you're all clean and in your sexy clothes.
I don't own anything clean and sexy. Everything is either covered in baby spit or chunks of melted crayon.
Okay, Zed, I'm sorry.
The PI Susan hired goes to tell Paul about it, and he tells the PI to tell Susan a bunch of lies to throw her off. So Susan believes him, but then she asks him to look into Mike because she knows he's into some weird stuff. Gabby finds John and tells him she's pregnant and it might be his. And he has a little freak out in front of her. Can you have some decorum, please? She tells him she doesn't expect anything from him except to keep his mouth shut, and he's like, oh, say less. Susan gets the info on Mike from the PI, and she lets Julie go through it of all people. The police should take her away too. Anyways, they find out that Mike actually killed a cop. Lynette puts on a sexy little maid outfit to seduce Tom, but Tom doesn't come home till it's really late, and when he does, he ends up bringing his colleague. He finds the whole thing funny, and Lynette clearly doesn't because she thinks he's gonna leave her. John comes by the house to tell Carlos about him being the father since it's the right thing to do, and Gabby's like, not on my watch, you're not.
You are never gonna be the father of this baby. No matter what the paternity tests say, it's Carlos's child.
How can you say that?
Because Carlos can provide, John.
Paul is trying to get Zach and him out of town, so he drugs Zach up to make it easier to transport him, and Felicia gets Zach to save him. What in the world is going on? Tom makes up with Lynette by putting on a Speedo to help spice things up, so they're good now. Paul goes to Felicia's to get Zach back, and she's like, not so fast, you baby-stealing murderer.
What is it you want?
The same thing you want. For you to leave town, change your name, and start your life over again somewhere far away from here.
If you're so sure of yourself, why don't you just turn me in?
Because Zach would never forgive me. And it's important that we be on good terms, seeing as how he's going to be living with me now.
So, Paul actually leaves town. Susan goes looking for Kendra, that one girl that she met over at Mike's, and Kendra ends up telling her the real story.
The cop pulled a gun on him, and Mike fought him off, but they both went over the balcony. Mike was the only one that got back up.
So Mike went to jail for saving his druggy girlfriend that was gonna sleep with a cop to avoid going back to jail again for the 5th time? Oh, okay. Anyways, Susan now wants to be with him again. Justin is back as Gabby's gardener, and he's pissed about Gabby telling John he's too broke to care for the baby. Gabby then slaps him, and Carlos sees the whole thing.
Why'd you hit the lawn boy?
Well, if you saw what he did to our begonias, you'd slap him too.
There's some kind of team restructuring at Tom's company that requires Annabelle to travel a lot for a client, and she can't go by herself, so she decides Tom should go with her. And Lynette is about to cut her. George and Bree are at another hangout session, but this time it's at a mini golf place, and Bree is touching all up on George just to be playful, and he gets a very strong feeling from Bree touching him. Bree gets mad and is like, oh, Rex was right. You do like me. And George is like, well, what do you want from me? So she ends their friendship. Mike and Susan are now moving in together, so good for them, I guess. While Susan and Mike are moving stuff, she tells him that all that stuff about him trying to find his ex's killer has got to go. And he's like, okay, fine. Zach isn't taking Paul leaving all that well, so he has another freak out by throwing things. And when Felicia's cleaning up the mess, she finds a little note that Paul left in a baseball mitt saying to meet him at the baseball field. Lynette is plotting to get Tom another job at her old department so Annabelle can leave her husband alone. But they don't want him, they want her. And she's like, what? Me? So she comes up with the next best thing. Give them Annabelle. George is still down about Bree dumping him, so he sneaks into their house to switch out Rex's heart pills again. He also goes through Bree's underwear drawer and takes pictures. He goes through the rest of their things and finds a box full of instruments, so now he knows they're into some real spicy stuff. Mike goes to see Felicia to talk about how Paul most likely framed him for Martha's murder and possibly killed his ex. She also tells Mike that he's gonna be at the baseball field on Thursday. Gabby goes through her mail and figures out that Carlos did mess with her birth control pills, and she's pissed. He's like, that baby is mine too, you can't leave. And she said, who said that?
Hey, we're a family now. This baby needs its mother and its father.
Oh, Carlos. Whoever said you were the father?
Carlos then steals Edie's car to follow her and sees who she cheated with. But he conveniently forgot he's on house arrest, so now the police are looking for him. Carlos then sees her talking to Justin and then goes inside to beat him up, but then the police arrest him. Obviously, Justin is gay, so now he gets charged with a hate crime because he already beat up another gay guy. On the plus side, he thinks Gabby was lying about the whole affair just to make him mad, so he doesn't suspect anything anymore. Annabelle tells her boss about her new job offer, but he counter-offers and makes her the VP of the whole company, so now she's not going anywhere. Tom is pissed because he's been wanting that job, and he goes off on his boss.
You have been running this company into the ground since you got here. Way I see it, I'm getting out easy.
All right, Scavo, you want to know why I gave that promotion to Annabelle? Why she got the nod instead of you? It was Lynette.
What?
She went to my wife and begged her to get me to kill your promotion. She said that if you start traveling more, it's going to hurt your family.
So, Tom quits. George runs into Bree at the grocery store and he tells her that Rex is always bragging to the other doctors about their spiced up love life. He also mentions their box full of toys, so obviously Bree believes him and now she's mad at Rex. Susan finds Martha's journal in Mike's car, so now she thinks he's up to his sleuthing shenanigans again. Her and Julie go through that journal and they find out that Martha was blackmailing Mary Alice. Bree confronts Rex and while they're talking, he has another heart attack. But Bree decides to be a little petty and take her time before taking him to the hospital. And the episode ends with a new family moving on to the lane. Episode 23 opens up to a flashback about 15 years ago when Mary Alice took Zach from Deirdre, so we can actually see what happened back then.
I'll sell you my baby.
What?
I heard you talking, and I know you can't have your own. It's been killing you.
I think it's time that you left.
No, I'm thinking about Dana. You'll give him a good home, okay? He'll be better off.
Deirdre ODs like the next day, so now everyone's looking for her baby, but Mary Alice already took him. So now she gotta go. And that's how Mary Alice and Paul ended up moving onto Wisteria Lane. It was all good till about 3 years later when Deirdre shows up on their doorstep all clean from the drugs, and she wants her baby back. Back to present day, Danielle calls the girls to the hospital because it's not looking good for Rex, and Bree's really going through it. Zach doesn't want to stay with Felicia anymore, and he just wants to wait for his dad to come back, and she's like, well, sorry, he's not coming back. Zach now thinks she did something to his dad, so he beats her with a hockey stick. Edie goes to see the new family on the street, the Applewhites, since she sold them the house before actually meeting them, and they're kind of weird. Mike still hasn't come home since going to look for Paul, and Susan's getting worried because she knows he's doing something shady. And he is. He has Paul all tied up in his car. Gabby decides to testify for Carlos so he doesn't get charged for a hate crime for beating up 2 gay guys, but not without any conditions.
When the baby cries in the middle of the night, you're going to get up without saying one word. Doctor's appointments,
You're driving. I'm not putting a car seat in my Maserati.
Lynette is out with the kids at an arcade and she finds Tom there playing air hockey with some kids. And she's like, don't you have a job? And he's like, I quit because you cost me my promotion, so you can go. The doctors are gonna operate on Rex and he's afraid he's gonna die. So just in case he does, he apologizes to Bree for everything he's done. She forgives him and just wants everything to be good with him because he's gonna be just fine. Susan goes into Mike's house and who does she see? Zach. And he's holding a gun. He's literally holding her hostage in there, and he tells Susan that since Mike has gone to kill Paul, he's gonna kill Mike. And Susan's like, whoa. Do you know the full story?
I never had a baby sister.
Honey, I know about Dana.
How stupid are you? I'm Dana. My mother was some junkie. They stole me and changed my name. They have been lying to me my entire life. Everyone lies to me!
Someone get this man some help. While Gabby is testifying for Carlos, John comes by and spills the beans on everything.
Just so you know, you beat up the wrong guy. Didn't you think it was strange that you had the only lawn on Wisteria Lane that needed to be mowed 3 times a week?
I don't know. I kind of like Petty John. The doctors tell Rex that his heart problems are most likely because of what he's been eating, so now the doctors think that Bree has been trying to kill him. And since he's been a terrible husband, he's fine with it, and he writes her a note. She then gets a call from the hospital saying Rex passed away, and she's completely shell-shocked. Lynette and Tom talk about her low-key sabotaging him, and shockingly, he's fine because now he wants to be at home while Lynette brings the money. I don't know. There's something kind of funny about it. Mike takes Paul to a secluded area to kill him, and Paul's like, okay, before you do, can you please tell me why you want to kill me? And he's like, you literally killed my girl, you idiot. And Paul's like, oh. But let me tell you the full story first. So Deirdre came back to get Zach, aka Dana, and Mary Alice wasn't trying to do all that.
You're going.
I'm getting my son and I'm taking him home.
Paul, stop her.
Please, come on! Sit down! Sit down!
Re-raise him. We're his parents.
So her and Mary Alice tussle a little bit, and she kills her. So Paul and Mary Alice dump Deirdre in the chest, but little Zach sees what they're doing. After hearing the whole story, Mike doesn't kill him, but now he's super upset. And the episode ends with Mike coming back home to Zach and Susan, but we don't know what happens yet. And that is the end of season 1 of Desperate Housewives. I'm not even joking when I say my head is spinning. I honestly genuinely forget what an absolute roller coaster this show is, and we're only at season 1. It just gets crazier from here. Season 2 will come out very soon, but don't ask me when. I don't want you guys to actually hold me accountable for it. I really had such a fun time doing this, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I don't know. I think someone needs to check in on you because there's no way you're okay right now. Again, I really want to thank all of you so much for watching, and I will see you next time for season 2. Bye.